Chris.
What's up there, Ike?
It's our favorite time of the year.
Absolutely. Sheena time.
Yes, and Mattera is back. Welcome to Loose Lips, everybody. This is the Sheena Easton special with our favorite guest, Mattera. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing good. How are you doing, Ike? I see your schedule's awfully busy.
Yeah, very, very well. The summer now is going to kick in. I usually don't schedule anything in the winter, but we did Loose Lips, the live version in April, which was fantastic. We did it like the old Johnny Carson.
Oh, that's cool.
Rivers, and we had the couch set up in the interview, and they would come out, move down as the next one came out. It was great.
That's great.
Yeah.
How did you like that?
Oh, it was fabulous. I'm going to do it again.
Did you feel like Johnny Carson?
No, I felt like Joan Rivers after, a couple of surgeries.
Oh.
How are things going with you? What's going on?
Work is pretty busy, and I'm looking forward to Gov Ball. I'm going to the Governor's Ball Music Festival.
Sweet.
In a couple of weeks, actually. So I'm looking forward to that. I usually do that every year.
Yeah. Anybody in particular you're looking forward to seeing, or?
Benson Boone.
Okay.
My nephew's coming in. He's gonna go to day 3, and we're gonna see Hosier.
Yes. I did a song with Barbara on her new album.
Yes. Yeah. The first time I ever saw your face, that was excellent.
Oh, thanks, Chris. I think
Mount
you're special too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I like the hat, by the way.
Well, I have to tell you, I lost 25 pounds. Yes.
Wow, that's great.
I haven't lost anything 25 pounds since I was 25. So
your dog died?
I'm allergic to dogs, Chris. My cat. Yeah, I've been working out. I got this big photo shoot in July. They want me to play a vampire in this photo shoot, and I'm thinking, oh God. But
Nice.
I have to be in shape for it. So,
all right.
God willing.
You did it. That's great.
I got to put the Sarah Lee down.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's get into this because I am so excited. First of all, this show is sponsored by Überlube. Überlube has been sponsoring 50 Shades of Gay for probably over 5 years now. You could go to their website, Überlube.com, and visit their website for all their incredible products. Everything from travel size to big glass bottles. It's really a great product, and we're happy they're behind us. No pun intended. And you can watch us on Ripped TV at riptv.live. And that's every Wednesday when our show also airs on YouTube. And speaking of YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel at Loose Lips, the podcast.
That's right. And our guest today is returning for the 11th time. The 11th time. To discuss the latest Sheena Easton release of the Cherry Red RT Industries campaign, a 5 CD box set.
Yes, and the set includes Sheena's first 5 albums with 98 tracks. I would have been happy if I lost 98 pounds. That would have been a better number, right, to bring up, not 25.
You can't have everything.
What'd you say?
You can't have everything.
I know. It includes her early hits, songs from her first TV special, B-sides, and unreleased songs.
It's what we've been waiting for, and
welcome the man who makes it happen, Mattera.
Hi. Hello.
Adam, how are you?
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. I can't believe it's the 11th time. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And the next time will be 12. We were at a dozen.
Oh God, yeah, that'll be.
I hope we get a
big
big
by the end of the year, hopefully. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so it's like because it was the first release came out in the autumn of 1990 of
2021, right?
2021. 2021.
Yeah, that's when you first came on the show. It was the fall of 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
And all 3 of us look younger. Amazing.
And then we're aging as each episode airs.
It's called the breezy filter. Well, welcome back. This is obviously what all Sheena fans have been waiting for, and it's Volume 1. So just give us a little idea of what the box set consists of, and we have a bunch of questions for you too.
Well, so volume 1, so as Chris is now displaying, it consists of the first 5 studio albums she recorded for EMI. So Take My Time, You Could Have Been With Me, Madness, Money and Music.
Speed it up, Vanna.
Best Kept Secret. And
Todo me recuerda a ti.
thank you very much. Everything Reminds Me of You. The English translation, the Spanish album.
Yes.
It's affectionately known as. So they're all been remastered from the original masters. So I had to find them all. And, you know, Sheena also wrote a introduction for the box set. On the very first release, there was a small extract of that. This is a full thing she wrote back then.
Wow.
And then there's my liner notes and lots of rare photos. So that will be interviewing all the different people, like Christopher Neal, who produced the first 3 albums, Greg Matheson, who produced the Best Kept Secret, and
Yes.
also the various songwriters and a whole bunch of people. So
Excellent.
lots of rare photos. So that's really what it consists of, yeah. And also in there, thankfully, which I'm really pleased about, is also, like you said, the unreleased material. There's 25 tracks.
Yes.
There's different alternate versions, tracks from the TV special Act 1. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff in there, really, basically.
So the covers, I like the different covers on for the Take My Time, You Could Have Been With Me, all different from the originals, which is amazing because those must have been from the photo shoot, obviously.
Yes, exactly. And so the idea was there to, well, you know, obviously the album, some of the albums more than others, Take My Time probably the most, has been reissued a number of times. Mm-hmm. So I just thought it'd be nice to give them a new, fresh look, you know, because people have seen those covers over the years many times. So why not do something new? And I found those outtakes, different takes from the session for them. And so it kind of made sense to go in that direction. I quite like it. Well, in fact, I would say that in some ways, I probably prefer that cover of Madness.
Yes. Oh, hands down. Hands down.
I think it's
totally.
But,
I don't think it would have had anything to do with the sales, but it definitely would have been more like eye candy to look at when you're picking it up. And, you know, the other one, was about to change.
One they used was really awkward somehow, a bit of an awkward shot. But I like to smile. But anyway, so that was the idea. So we refreshed that, did the new artwork for each of the individual discs,
yeah,
and did it and done it as a volume 1, which obviously, because there'll be a volume 2. So, but you know, didn't want to kind of make it kind of so that everyone could. It wouldn't be like a really expensive to do a 10 CD, to do a bigger thing would have been very expensive, and I think that might have been a bit. Too much of a high ticket item for some people.
Right.
Plus, it was much more manageable to do it that way as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd still be working on it now.
And you could appreciate all the extra material too. You're sitting down, you're listening to them each one by one, which I'm sorry, Chris, I know you want to ask a question. Looking at the list of all the alternative versions, was the box set already in mind when this project started?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm saying there were so many alternative versions. I was like, what happens if it doesn't? All these songs that are just, you know, waiting to be released.
Absolutely. So what I always had in mind, I mean, all along there was going to be a box set from the very, very beginning. Yep. And then at one point there was only going to be a box set, in fact.
Right.
So I would have just worked on that for years and years and it would have come out, I suppose. But then the label wanted to do individual releases. And also the idea of doing vinyl releases came about as well, because obviously vinyls are very popular as well. There's a whole market there. And so during the course of the campaign, as the vinyl was coming out for each album, that gave me the opportunity then to have a budget to go in, find the original masters for each album, say Best Kept Secret, for example, then also start looking to see if I could find other material. And masters. And so I've been able to, over the years as I've been doing the other stuff, it's not just done in one session, it's done in many, many different sessions, and going back and getting the tapes digitized and finding the 24 tracks and finding all that stuff. So it's all been accumulated, and I've been working on it with that in mind over the years.
Yeah. Wow. A lot of hard work, Adam. My God, and it's just amazing.
My God.
What you put
it was a load of work. I mean, it's hours and hours and months. Yeah, it's so much. But so when there was a release, like say right at the beginning of Private Heaven, I found all that stuff really quickly, and it kind of said, well, let's just put, and we want to put something else, so put that out as a double CD. But then as the years went on with say a Private Heaven, I started finding more and more. Wow. Oh no, but Private Heaven isn't on this, so I mean, it's
right, the next one, yeah.
But yeah, so there was stuff I found at one point, and I keep finding more because it's, I mean, literally, as I've said before, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of tapes, and it's impossible to get the entire thing digitized in terms of time and in terms of money. It just would never happen. So you have to be very selective and think about it, and then sometimes you find one tape, and one tape can lead to another, because there's all kinds of different ways in which you kind of approach this sort of stuff.
You're a little bit like a detective because you're going off of the studio descriptions, right? With the titles and
Yes, and sometimes the studio descriptions aren't entirely accurate. Sometimes the tapes aren't dated, so you don't know what date they're recorded.
I think I remember you saying that for Sweet Talker when you weren't.
Yeah, exactly. That was really confusing because there was this track like listed as Sweet Talk. Right. Some cases it was listed as Sweet Talk because it was titled in different ways.
Yep.
Sometimes, like in a track like Telephone, for example, the early versions of Telephone were titled Long Distance Love Affair. So obviously at one point it's going to be called that. The early versions of Hungry Eyes were called Chinatown.
Oh.
I remember there were these interesting titles. Some had different, working titles.
Yeah, that makes sense because of that. That was probably written specifically for the Asian market, and with that keyboard synth.
Yeah, that little kind of riff.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't that a part of when she was staying in, I think in one of her stories, that she was touring and she was always in Japan and the Far East, and No,
that was Devil in a Fast Car.
Oh, I thought that was Hungry Eyes.
No, I think it was the lyric "Rising East to the Lion East to the Rising Sun for 90 minutes. I'll be under the gun."
Ah, because she also
that was because she was performing in Asia.
Ah, because she did say the East is red tonight, and
maybe they did that for both. Yeah,
they did a whole sort of little moment. And I think she did a bunch of I can't remember what the product was. I think it was some sort of alcohol, some sort of Japanese
vodka or something, right?
Something like that, yeah. And she did, and I think wasn't Devil in a Fast Car used in one of the ads?
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I'm right. Yeah, they weren't seen over here at the time, but I'm sure they're on YouTube. I have seen them. So.
Yeah, that was a very common thing. It's such a different era, right? In the United States, you didn't want to be affiliated with any commercials because it was looked down upon. Artists to do that. So a lot of artists struck branding deals overseas because we didn't have YouTube and we never saw them.
We never had an idea. Now everything is totally global.
Now everything, it's like your brand does better the more things you're affiliated with. You know?
Yeah. Well, I remember saying that. I mean, it reminds me of something that Chris Neal said for the first Sheena Easton album, that when the Take My Time, when they were doing that, there was an opportunity. It was just the beginning of people becoming aware in record labels about how there could be this synergy between fashion and television and music and pop, which hadn't really happened before. And she was kind of a pioneer of that in a way, because, she would do be perceived. What am I trying to say here? But just that, Sheena was a great vehicle for that kind of thing to happen because she was so young and beautiful and good looking that she started to cross the lines between those things in a way.
Well, yeah, they were doing music videos before MTV even started.
Yeah, absolutely.
She was shooting these little promotional videos like Morning Train. That's why they were so cheap.
Yeah.
It was before MTV started, but they knew that video TV shows were showing clips of these, so they just said, let's just make them. And, she recently was on an interview where she said, the director of the first video, Morning Train, which actually was the second video, he's mortified. He's now when he looks back at it, he's he can't believe that he directed that and did that to her, you know, like, but they just threw together some money and just, all right, let's go on the train now.
Yeah.
You know, scrub the train.
Yeah.
Like,
They did.
Yes.
They did.
They were quite literal.
it was all, Modern Girl is hysterical because it literally is, I mean, thank God she's not actually eating a tangerine, but they did everything but that line.
Yeah, everything but. Yeah.
So, quick question for you, Adam. So, the alternative versions, did you come across some that are just like, oh, we can't even put that out? Like the takes weren't as great, or
were there some that didn't? Oh yeah. There were some where the tapes had deteriorated completely, and you couldn't use them, unfortunately. There were some where you'd get the original master of something, and you'd find that some parts of it were missing, for example, or all kinds of different technical things where you couldn't do it. Yeah, for sure. There was some where maybe there were would you find a rough vocal that maybe, but it was an incomplete vocal. There's all different things like that. It's possible. Yeah.
I always wonder, because I remember in past interviews, I don't know if it was the Carson show, where she said she was listening to hundreds of songs. And I always wondered if those songs were ever recorded and they just said, we can't even save the tape, or we're getting rid of it. I'm just wondering if there were any of those tracks.
There weren't any sort of actual new songs. The only song in the whole thing really was the one that was there's a track in the Private Heaven sessions called "In It to Win It."
Yes,
that I put the instrumental on the deluxe edition, because there was only ever instrumental, and it was a real. And Greg Matheson couldn't remember, who the producer couldn't remember that song.
Wow.
Do you remember there was this song? It's like, I don't know. No, I played to him. He said, "Oh, it's vaguely. I don't know. Did she ever record a vocal?" I don't think so. No, but he wasn't sure, and so because he wasn't sure, I was desperately searching for every tape of "In It to Win It," and I kept getting it converted. All the different tapes that had any mention of it, I got converted, of which there were a few. There weren't loads. There weren't actually that many, but none of them had a vocal.
Wow.
I found the master, and the masters are much more. So when I'm talking about well, they're all masters, but when I talk about the 24-track master, it has every track. It has the guitar, it has the piano, it has the synth, it has every section, but it had no vocal. So I don't think she ever recorded a vocal for that.
Damn.
And I'm imagining that if there were songs that she was considering that didn't make it, they may not have. I don't think they would go in the studio unless they record them.
Right.
Yeah, because I think that I do remember seeing that interview too. It was Tonight Show, and she talked about that process, and she did that for years. And I know Chris Neal was instrumental in the beginning of sorting through the songs for her, and then she started to get them sent to herself, and she started being more selective with that.
Yeah, or they both get them sent. They'll both come. I mean, I think there's a story on one of the things that, like, for example, I think it was "I Wouldn't Beg for Water," which was by Lisa and Vale, who did a lot of her songs. That duo of songwriters. They both brought that in. So I think they both individually had heard that from those guys and both brought it to the table. So obviously it was like, well, we both love it, so we're going to do it. Right. And then sometimes, like, I don't know, like "In the Winter," the Janice Ian song, that was Sheena. She loved that song. She took it in. So as the years progressed, certainly by the time of the third album, it felt very much like Sheena had a lot more agency and a lot more confidence and a lot more, and all that stuff in bringing more material.
And there was a budget involved, so they couldn't record all the songs that they wanted, and then they really did have to whittle it down to 10 to 15 songs. And sometimes in, like, the case of Nile Rodgers, they probably had such limited time, but such a high budget for just his production. They could only cut 10 tracks. Like, that's all. Absolutely. They would.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They'd have to, like, know which songs before they went in.
Yeah, and time, of course, especially in the early days with her schedule. It's so, like, where are we going to find a moment to block into her schedule where she can actually get in the studio? Right. So they wanted to make sure every day was like they were going to use. So there aren't that many, particularly from this era, these first 5 albums. there aren't really that many songs. For the first album, songs that never came out. For the first album, there was just one, which is "Have You Seen the Rumor?" Have you heard the rumor?
Yes.
Have you heard the rumor?
Which you said it was originally for Cliff Richard.
That's right. That's what Peter Vale said.
It does
they had him in mind for it.
That's not similar to something.
I think Ike said that the first time he heard it. He texted me and said, "It sounds like a Cliff Richard."
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, there you go. You were totally chiming in. I mean, it's quite a nice track. It could have been a B-side.
Oh, absolutely.
It could have. I mean, it's not bad. I don't mean that in a bad way, because I think the B-sides on that era, all our B-sides were always really good, really good. And often strong enough to be on the album.
I can only imagine the time with her touring and everything, because up until "Do You," she was putting out an album every single year.
Yeah.
And the songs, listening to them touring and trying, I'm sure it was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Relentless. And that was, and people did that. That was common then for everyone to put an album out almost to the month every year. So every September or October, whatever it was. It was usually then, because it was the lead up to Christmas, people would drop an album. They just did it every year, and they toured and they repeated and repeat and repeat. Mm-hmm. Now it's more like every, I don't know, 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
It's different, and people dropped more stuff on the internet more frequently and on song, and so it's a different model, really.
But some of them don't have that long-lasting, it doesn't last as long, and then you got to wait 3 years for the next one to come out of it.
Yeah, exactly. The only other song, I'm talking about like songs that weren't, the only other song really from this particular era, this first 5 albums, so up until 84-ish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was "Woman."
Yes.
And "Woman" is that song written by Sue Quinn, who also wrote
Weekend in Paris.
Weekend in Paris. Exactly. Yeah. And she wrote a song called Isn't It So?
Yes.
The last track on You Could Be
Under a different name, right?
Under a different name. And so when I spoke to her, she remembered "Woman." And she remembered that of course remembered it. She wrote it, and it was on the same tape, the same demo that had "Weekend in Paris" on it. And Sheena had listened to it and loved it, and then they recorded it, but it never came out. And that's rare. So they did record it. Chris Neal remembered it when I sent it to him. He's like, "Oh my God, I love this song. I don't know why." So.
The vocals, obviously, the vocals were a killer on that song.
Yeah, that was a great find. I mean, I like all the unreleased tracks that you found. That and "Have You Ever Been in Love" was another one that was just an amazing find.
Amazing.
Perfection.
Yeah, but "Woman," in a way, I thought "Woman" was more exciting because it's like I didn't even know that song.
Yeah.
"Have You Ever Been in Love," obviously I was familiar with it. Great song though. And the "Woman" was. Also, when I saw it, like, this is like another thing about when you're doing this sort of research. When you see it listed down, it said "Woman." I was like, well, it's "One Man Woman." It's not going to be a different song. It must be "One Man Woman." They've just called it "Woman,"
Yeah.
And then, my God, it's a different song, It's unbelievable. Because often they abbreviate them on to just,
Right.
I actually thought it was the John Lennon song when I saw it on. I was like, oh, this is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Could have been the John Lennon song, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which would have been written by then. It's true.
Yeah.
It could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there's an alternate version of that on here, of "Woman."
Good.
Because what I wanted to do as well was, because of these 5 discs, well, I mean, the vast majority of it hasn't ever been remastered, and a whole bunch hasn't been released. But of course, we did put out "Take My Time Deluxe" and "Madness, Money and Music Deluxe" prior to this. So I wanted, for people that had bought those, for there to be as much as possible new stuff. So you've got kind of alternate versions of lots of tracks from those albums included.
So tell us the process of that. Did you find like one alternate version and then mastered that as is?
So no, what would happen is which I didn't even have these things when for example, in "Madness, Money and Music," I didn't have this material when I was doing that original thing, because it's been over the years since then.
Right.
I found the actual 24-track masters for, not all of them, but a handful, maybe the ones that are on here, the alternative. I think it's like 4 tracks, which is "In the Winter" and the title track, and Woman,
Mm-hmm.
and
Madness, Money, Music.
Music. I said that one, yeah, and there was one other as well. Wind Beneath My Wings, I think it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Wind Beneath My Wings. And so I found 24 tracks. And so on the 24 tracks, when they were digitized, I realized that she had recorded, say, for In the Winter, I think it was 5 different vocals.
Wow.
So there are 5 different vocal takes.
Oh.
So what you're hearing on that alternate version is a completely different vocal.
Oh. I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah, it's superb. And we never talked about You Could Have Been With Me. What was your favorite story about that when you were interviewing some of the songwriters?
We never really talked about. Yeah, no, we did. Yes, that's true. We didn't talk about it. So what was interesting there, I think, the main theme that came through was by that point, Sheena had a couple of big hits in the US. So she was truly international by that point. And the record label really wanted to follow it up very quickly. And she had been like green-lit as a priority, as it were, for the US. So there was real determination to make her a star and a real pressure. So I think what you see on that album, and talking to Chris Neal and some of the songwriters, what you hear on the album as well is a real attempt to sort of make her sound more international, by which I mean more American, really.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a real, if you hear some of the lyrics, she's talking about, on the first album, she's flicking through magazines and eating tangerines. And, and it's much more British. And on the second album, she's like, in Telephone Lines, for example, she's like in a motel room, in a hotel room, like, and I won't even waste a dime, she says.
Yeah,
telephone booth, yeah.
Telephone line,
yeah, the lyrics are much more. And then on songs like A Letter from Joey, and it's much more American rock sound.
Yeah.
Not like hard rock, but a kind of more West Coast
Yeah.
vibe. You know, it's starting to come into the music there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more sophisticated.
Yeah.
Particularly Savoir Faire, which is probably my favorite track on that album.
That still reminds me of Steely Dan. The first time I heard it, when I don't know why, but it did.
It's really Steely Dan. In fact, Steely Dan came up as a reference when I was talking to it to the songwriters. Yeah, it really is. It's very sophisticated. I mean, I've got all the instrumentals. I really wanted to put the instrumentals on the album as well, but Sheena wasn't keen on having an instrumental, so we didn't do that. But on that, where you hear just her backing vocals and the instruments, you really hear the musicianship on a track like Savoir Faire, which is great. But so You Could Have Been With Me. Yeah, it became more Americanized. It was. They also held back, of course. I did it, the track listings as the original first release of the album, the first UK releases, because on the US release, they held back When He Shines, because they were convinced when they heard it that they didn't put it on the first album in the US, they removed it and they held it back for You Could Have Been With Me, because they were determined that would be the smash hit. It wasn't quite as big hit as they probably wanted it to be in the US. It was still a big hit. I think probably because by the point when it came out, it was like a third ballad in a row.
Right.
And maybe the radio wanted something different and it didn't quite impact the way it would have had it been released at a different point. But that was interesting. And because of that, it meant that the song Isn't It So, which is another great song, was pulled off, was never on the album in America.
At all. But the listing is on the American version in the credits.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but it's not on the album.
Yeah, so it seems like they were intending on putting Isn't It So out on the American version as well. And at the last minute, they decided to put When He Shines on in its place. And I always thought it was due to the fact that she had performed it on The Tonight Show. And people started calling, because that's what they used to do. They used to call the record store and say,
Mm-hmm.
do you have that song that Sheena Easton sang on The Tonight Show last night? And that was what the impetus was to, because if they held it back, I wonder why, if that was the case, why they didn't release it as the first single. Like if they were so sure that that was going to be the big single and they held it. And also, if you're a new artist, right, and you have the record label, why on earth would they hold back a song that they think is going to be a smash hit from your first album when they don't know if you're going to be successful or not?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like,
Well, that was a story that Florrie Palmer, who co-wrote it, told me.
Well, she's a liar.
Yeah.
No.
No, well, because they pulled it because it wasn't on the first release. It was removed from the first album with the intention of keeping it for something to happen. But the credit thing, they probably it's probably an error because someone didn't notice it.
Oh, totally.
But yeah. But as for the sequence, I don't know. Maybe they wanted to keep the sequence of singles so it was consistent, internationally. But then they didn't do that either because Just Another Broken Heart wasn't put out in the US, was it?
Yeah. No.
So it's all a bit, a bit messy in that way.
Well,
but
speaking of ballads, so I just was curious at the way For Your Eyes Only is on because I'm seeing everybody posting pictures. So you have the 2 tracks on Take My Time, and then the other version on the You Could Have Been With Me. Were they? You didn't want them all on the first?
What was the thinking of that? Well, the thinking was, for a start, the thinking was to do it because it's very much a chronological representation. The same reason why in the first album I kind of did it. Those first 3 singles were out almost a year before the album came out. So I did the A-sides and B-sides in that order.
Got it.
Before you get to the album. So it was following the same story of how she recorded them. And then at the end of that album, you have the demo, the early version of For Your Eyes Only, which is a completely different song, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's been circulating on YouTube for a while, but this has really now been, it's a far greater record. I mean, it's been, it's properly, now it's a proper version, clean version.
And I just want to clarify that the alternate version of For Your Eyes Only is not one that we've heard because there were 2 unheard versions that were circulating on YouTube but the alternate version that you include in here is the original For Your Eyes Only in its early form. Like there's a few lyric changes.
Different lyrics.
Yeah. And it's interesting to hear it at that stage of development. So,
So what I wanted to do was, so at the end of disc 1, at the end of Take One, you have the earliest version, which is a different song, and then you have the hit version, and then that's the end of that. There's no more space on that disc anyway to put any more. And I did want to have 3 versions of For Your Eyes Only in a row. It's just a bit much. So you've got these 2 versions, and then at the end of You Could Have Been With Me, you have Family of One. Which is obviously a B-side, which is a great song.
Yeah.
And then you have that alternate version you're talking about, which was found which was from the masters of Your Eyes Only.
Wow. Now, Chris,
it was. Yeah, different vocal, different lyric.
You mentioned different lyrics. Is it the lyrics that she used in her concert in '82?
No.
Different altogether?
Just something that they changed and refined, I guess.
Yeah, just the odd, not the whole lyric, just like one or two.
Yeah, just lines. Like 1 or 2 lines here,
Yeah.
That they just said, no, this will work better after they heard probably this version.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and the mix is different. So certain the synth sounds and the pings.
Yeah,
that's more prominent than they are on the final version. It's a different take on it. Yeah.
Best Kept Secret. Can you tell us a little bit something that stood out for that? Because that was another album that we had never spoken about.
Yeah, sure. Well, Best Kept Secret, the most notable thing about one of the most notable things, of course, is it's the first album that she entirely recorded in America. The first time and the first album without Christopher Neal.
Yes.
So it was a big transition. And I think by that point, a combination of things had happened. She had been done 3 albums in a row, so she'd been working for only worked with Chris Neal in the studio until We've Got Tonight. So I think there was something about We've Got that happening. Her doing a record, which was the chairman of EMI's idea. Madness, Money and Music hadn't had a hit single. A major hit single off it, but she was still a big star. She was on TV regularly, and so for a shot, what would they do? And they did that thing. They combined her with another superstar, Kenny Rogers, who had a long history of superstar duet hits. Did the thing. It was a huge hit. David Foster produced it. Then it was time to go in the studio doing her next album. It's like, okay, well, obviously, I've worked with David Foster. He's great. I'm going to work with David Foster again. He's going to do the album. I'm doing America, and I think it was amicable, her split with Chris Neal. He knew that like they'd done it, and there's no need to keep doing it. He had other things to do. She moved on, and she was living in America a lot more by then, and so their relationship was hard because they were flying back and forward on the Concorde.
In fact,
it was nuts.
In one of the interviews, they said that he was actually with her when they met her for the first time. I don't know if it was Greg or Jay.
Greg said that, yeah.
Yeah, that Chris Neal was with her when he met her.
That's right.
He thought he might be. He's like, maybe he's involved with some part of the album.
Right, yeah, that's right. So very much. So there was talk about David Foster doing it. David Foster wasn't available because he was so hot at the time and doing other stuff. But the same management that managed Foster also managed Greg Matheson and also managed Jay Graydon, who were the two producers on Best Kept Secret. And so that came about because he was put forward, Greg. And so when Greg first met Sheena, Chris was with her. So it hadn't been decided at that point. It wasn't definite. It was like a meeting. And Chris was essentially her mentor, confidant, knew all about the music business. You know what I mean? So he was very much by her side. And it ended up being Greg. And the thing that was particularly, I guess, fortuitous about Greg was that by that point when they met, Greg had just had the #1 and #2 record in America with
Mickey
by Tony Basil and Gloria by Laura Branigan. He produced both of them. He co-wrote Mickey. And Sheena loved Gloria and had already had that in her mind just prior to even knowing or meeting Greg for the first time. And when you listen to Telephone, you really can hear the Gloria influence. It's very much in that mode. And it was also what she needed. I think at one point Greg says, she was recording music or something to the effect of, Sheena was still a young woman and her music was older than she was. She could have been, the kind of material she was doing, she could have been recording when she was in her 30s, 40s,
Right.
Not that it was bad. I think it was brilliant.
Yeah, especially the singles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were some album tracks that were a little bit younger and rockier, but you're right. Most of the singles and therefore most of the albums were geared towards an adult contemporary market.
Yeah, and which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but she was a young, attractive, perfect for the video age, perfect to connect with the youth. That hadn't really happened, and there was an opportunity for it to happen, and they took that opportunity, and that's what Sheena really wanted as well. And so that's where Best Kept Secret places her with songs like Telephone, is much more in a youth, and that was a very intentional thing. To go in that direction. But of course, she was also maintaining what she did, her core, I suppose you could call it, with songs like Almost Over You, which has David Foster playing the intro. So David Foster was still involved because he plays that whole piano introduction.
In fact, I was looking up some old information like interviews and stuff, and I saw that Telephone, which I thought had been, but it wasn't. Telephone was never played on MTV. Even though it was a top hit. Yeah.
Video?
The first video that was played, she was in an interview and she said, for the first time, they're going to play one of my videos. It was Strut.
I don't know. No, that's not true. I remember watching MTV and they were playing Billy Joel's Tell Her About It. Girls Just Want to Have Fun and Telephone.
Well, it's not listed anywhere. And that's what she said in her interview. Maybe you saw it as a.
No, I remember watching MTV.
But your mind's not really right.
Telephone. No, it was. Trust me.
I know they did. They also did the making of Telephone, like little mini promotional thing to show on MTV. So that I guess that would have been aired at some point. I assume around Halloween. Of course, the telephone video is very post Thriller.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was that time when everyone was doing, like, Michael Jackson had just done it a year before, so everyone was throwing in.
And that was Steve Barron, right? The same guy who directed Billie Jean.
Same guy who directed Billie Jean. Same guy who the video that made him a huge big deal was actually "Don't You Want Me" with Human League.
Yes.
He did that, and then he did Billie Jean, so he was massive. But he had also done a couple of earlier Sheena videos. He'd done "Ice Out in the Rain."
Wow.
Oh, that's a nice
which
one.
No one saw, which no one ever saw that video really. So he had actually worked with her before, and I think he did. No, I think he did Machinery as well.
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, but then he did that. That Telephone was the first big one, and that was her first big video in a way, like first mega production.
Yeah, that
like
was
King
great.
Kong picks her up and all kinds of crazy shit.
It probably propelled it into the top 10, I'm sure too, just because, like you said, the Halloween, the season at the time, and it really.
Yeah, I think so, and also her first 12-inch single.
Yes.
Club.
Yep.
Remix, her first 12-inch. So there was a sense in which that album was not pulling her into the modern age, but it was very much a modern, contemporary sound. She wanted to have that new wave element that he had done with Tony Basil.
Yep.
She wanted to have a modern audience, get a youthful audience back, but also wanted to keep the people happy that like the ballads with Just One Smile and Almost Over You. It's a great album, I think. Best Kept Secret.
Oh yeah.
I'm so curious to hear the alternative version for Just One Smile.
Oh yeah, that's a longer version. There's a great alternative longer version of Sweet Talk.
Yes.
And tell us about the remix, the telephone mix that you did on there. That's alternate too, right?
It's not. I mean, vastly different. That was found on the master, the 24-track master. There's a different sounds and stuff on there. So it's a little kind of, when you listen to this alternate 7-inch version, but it's longer. It has a different ending. It sort of goes into the a cappella bit almost.
Yeah, I love that.
And it also has like a little sound, like a little kind of almost like a laser sound on it.
Yeah.
Which they obviously had at one point, but decided not to release. So that's cool. It's the same vocal. I think it's the same vocal though.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's the same vocal. Yeah, but it's different and longer. It has an extra bit at the end. So it's good. It's fun to hear. I think the one on that album, I'm trying to think which ones are the most different. Well, Wish You Were Here Tonight. There's a completely different take of that.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
And Let Sleeping Dogs Lie. That sounds like
that's right. That
very early stages, right? At development.
Yeah, that's very different. That was a very early version. Well, I mean, when I say very different, it's like the same song, but it's got a whole. There's that Water Under the Bridge section in the song that comes a sort of like riff towards the end in a way that they didn't really do in the final version.
Yeah, I wish they had left that in because it's very catchy. I like the way.
I think it's actually better that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's better that way. That's that. Yeah, yeah. What else can you say about Best Kept Secret? I feel there's something I'm missing. One thing I thought was very interesting. I spoke to the songwriter, the woman who wrote Almost Over You and Sweet Talk. Her name Jennifer Kimball. Yes, and for years and years she had toured and sung with Crystal Gale, and so Almost Over You was written while she was on tour. Was written at backstage at a piano while she was touring with Crystal Gale.
And Don Grierson was the one who found it. Don Grierson, who was the head of Capitol and was dating Sheena at the time,
right?
Found the tape with both songs and put a hold on them,
right?
For Sheena. So
yeah, that's a great song, isn't it?
Yeah.
So many songs that I believe Sheena would have recorded, like These Dreams by heart. I know he would have killed it.
And Don Grierson wound up being the A&R guy for My Cherie years later.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He put together or helped her select the songs for that.
Right.
He's listed it's the only album where there's someone listed as an A&R person.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, because really, I suppose the A&R was sort of on those earlier albums. It was Chris Neal really doing.
Yeah, usually it was the producer, but Don Grierson had gotten a reputation by that point, especially. He was responsible for Heart's comeback. I can't remember. There was someone else he was really very good at picking out a select amount of songs to help people get back to where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. The kind of role that Clive Davis would sort of do.
Yeah.
Especially when you get to that era, which is later, which Sheena got to with No Sound But a Heart, where it's like a multi-producer thing.
Right.
You know, on these early albums, it was either one producer or maybe, you know, in the case of this Kept Secret, there were two. But so there was more direction, some idea of a whole vision needs to be there. And so if you don't have one producer doing that, you need someone else to really take that role.
Yeah.
Think out how it's going to work as a whole. You know?
Jay Graydon, he's an interesting character. He talked a little bit about I Like the Fright and Let Sleeping Dogs Lie, and about getting a more edgier sound for her, right?
Yeah, that's right. And also one of the things he did say was, which I thought was very interesting, was he was aware of, because they had these time constraints for this album. You know, that's why Greg didn't have time to do the whole album and Jay didn't have time to do the whole album. So they did like half each, both in LA. So she was traveling between the two studios in LA and living in LA at the time. And Greg wrote, you know, a handful of, he wrote Devil in the Fast Car. He wrote the big hit Telephone. One of the last things they recorded. It was right towards the end. Yeah. Jay didn't write anything, and he kind of regretted it. He sort of said in the interview with him that I wish I'd written something, because obviously, if he had written it, with the publishing, you make more money, especially if it's chosen a single and it becomes a hit.
That's right. And she was looking for something like Little Red Corvette. She kept saying that to him.
She kept saying how much she liked Prince, and she had been looking for a song like Little Red Corvette. He wished, and I thought that was interesting because obviously this was before she worked with Prince.
Yeah.
By a year or so, before Sugar Walls. So she was already
had her eye
fan, of course, and Little Red Corvette would have been on the radio. And I thought that was an interesting little anecdote.
And he talked about Wish You Were Here Tonight, and how that should have been included on the album, correct?
That's right. Well, I guess when someone like Jay Graydon, an amazing guitar player, he'd worked with people like Al Jarreau and Donna Summer, and I mean, so many. The list just goes on and on. And I asked him about Wish You Were Here Tonight and why it was, and he didn't realize it wasn't on the album, because I guess when you're, as fans, we all know, like, what do you mean you don't know it's on the album? But like, he's doing so many artists, so many sessions, he's not remembering what was on the A side, what was on the B side, what was a single. He's just moving on to the next thing. He's probably not even thinking about it. And he was shocked that Wish You Were Here Tonight wasn't included, because he thought it was one of the best things they did. But that song, which I didn't realize until I was doing this, I hadn't actually realized it was a cover. It was originally cut by Ray Charles.
Yep.
And so a year, or not long before, about a year before. And so Jay Graydon is credited as one of the co-writer on Sheena's version, but not on the original. And Jay was saying he didn't remember why. So I don't know why. I must have changed something. But I think it's because the arrangement's slightly different. So you can go to co-writing or something, maybe a lyric change. But a great song, which kind of did really have a place on the album, I think.
I think I probably would have replaced it with Just One Smile, because I just feel like it was just it was soulful. Her vocals were incredible, consistent throughout, compared to Just One Smile, from my opinion.
Oh, really? You would have got rid of Just One Smile?
Yeah. Yeah, because Almost Over You is so fabulous. The production, the build, and
it couldn't replace that if it was going to replace the song. And you know, I love Just One Smile, but I probably like Wish You Were Here Tonight better. So I would agree with you. And also, it was a cover. Well, they both were covers, but Just One Smile was a cover of a much older song, and so perhaps that, you know, I think it sounds fine on side two, but you're right. It probably would have been better. I think the sequencing's a little off with this album anyway. I always felt like it should have been sequenced a little different, but
yeah, I know what you mean. Could well be. Wish You Were Here Tonight would be a good closing track.
yeah.
Odd closing the album with Best Kept Man. It doesn't feel like a closing track to me.
No.
You know,
Yeah.
it's so like upbeat and powerful. It doesn't feel like an album closer to me.
Right.
What's interesting about that as well is that like we Best Kept Man, talking about that one, that's a Greg Matheson production. He was saying that when he heard that, was re-listening to it, and we were talking about it. It was like, oh, I was really going for a kind of The Police sting, and I was like, okay, yeah, now hearing it, I can hear that. It really does have that sort of sound to it. Actually, that sort of rock reggae thing they were doing, quite unusual. But she never really recorded a track like that before since.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of an odd.
And they also said that "Devil in the Fast Car" was the last song, right, that they had recorded, and that was he said that she knew we were going to push her to have a harder sound, and she was ready for that.
Yeah, and she wanted that. Yeah, she wanted that as well. She wanted to get harder and more sort of, and of course they.
Oh no, was Telephone? I'm sorry, Telephone was the last song recorded.
No, sorry, yeah, Telephone was the last one.
Yeah.
Telephone, not Devil in Fast Car. Yeah, Telephone. So because he was writing songs as they were recorded, so he hadn't already written these songs. Him and Trevor Veach, who was the guy that was like co-writer and the arranger, they were writing songs for Sheena as they were doing the session and recording. He had a tape, a cassette, a demo he had done on Telephone, and was playing someone was playing it in the car. I think maybe his wife was playing.
His wife, yeah, she gave it to Sheena and said,
"Yeah, this is the hit. You've got to do it." And she loved it, and that's how they ended up doing it. And it was the last track they did, and their first single, of course.
One of my favorites off that album is "She's in Love with Her Radio" because the vocals are, and how they build each time she goes, so
yeah,
good.
that's a great song. I agree with you. I think that should have been the third single instead of "Devil in a Fast Car." "Devil in a Fast Car" was a great song, but just did not. I don't know why they think it would work on radio. It had no tempo throughout the verses, and then the tempo would kick in the first chorus. It was a little too moody, I think.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
But a great chorus. I understand, it's a catchy song, but it's an album track. It's not.
"She's in Love with the Radio" was definitely. Songs with the word radio in them always. Especially at that
no-brainer, right? The DJs would love that, yeah.
Radio Gaga, any song with the radio in it, they were like, "Oh, we're going to play that." Yeah, absolutely, they'd love that. And it's so kind of, it's a little bit sort of, it's edgy. It's very edgy.
Yeah.
I didn't know it would hit. It was a single in like someone like it was
Belgium or something, right?
Somewhere, or the Philippines or somewhere obscure. What? Yeah, it should have been a hit. It should have been a single. Sure, I agree.
Well, we have some questions that are coming in, and that might be a good segue to get into the Act 1.
Oh, yeah.
Kay wants to know, how did Al Jarreau end up singing with Sheena in her special Act 1? Did she have any influence on the selection of her guests? We already know Kenny Rogers, obviously, because of the hit. But she says Al Jarreau was a special surprise. And Kay, he's so amazing. He sends so many questions. And always sends, like, congrats to all the work you've done on this project.
Oh, thank you, Kay. That's great. Thank you so much. As far as I know, I couldn't get hold of any of the producers I couldn't find them to track them down for Act 1. So I don't know all the full background behind Act 1 and who ended up on the show and why and so on. But I can imagine what would make sense to me that the Al Jarreau connection would be, well, for a start, when she did, oh no, that would have been before, because Act 1 was taped and recorded before she started working on Best Kept Secret. But it's interesting because there is a connection with Jay Graydon because he had just produced Al Jarreau. So there was this sort of way in which they were circling around each other. Yeah. But I do love that.
There's an interview, and she did say that she asked for him to be on the show. She loved the album with We're in This Love Together, which Jay Graydon did produce.
Did that, yeah.
And I always thought that was how Jay got involved, because she loved that album and then asked for him. But then when I read that she was originally going for David Foster, which makes sense, and that they were all represented by the same people, it was like just a fate thing, like it was meant to be. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
and they were the big. I mean, Jay and Greg were both big producers in LA at the time. Were doing their thing, having huge hits and working with big stars. So it kind of all started interconnecting, you know. But Al Jarreau was big. I mean, Al Jarreau had been around for a decade or so recording by that point, but was having this real crossover moment with that sound, that kind of smooth as yacht. Well, they didn't call it yacht rock then. It was kind of yacht rock adjacent, kind of R&B version of yacht rock, sort of like songs like Morning, great song. And and so they do that medley on Act One. Yeah, they do Roof Garden.
Yes.
And what's the other song? Oh, it's Randy Crawford's song, Last Night at Dance Land. Yeah, I love that. So I'm really glad that we got that audio on here.
And that was another. That's not his song, right? Last Night at Danceland. That was.
No, it was recorded by Randy Crawford.
Randy Crawford, and she was another fan of Randy Crawford, because I remember hearing her in interviews saying she wished people would send her songs that they send to Randy Crawford. And so she must have not only picked Al, but had a say in what that medley was going to be.
Yeah, I'm sure she would have had a say in all that, every choice there. You know, all those songs, there are 4 or 5, I can't remember.
Billy Joel. Yeah.
Billy Joel.
He's a Rebel. You're right. All of those songs were songs that I've heard her mention. She's fans of those artists. So
On My Own was the vocals too on that. Oh,
amazing.
Yeah, wait till you hear these versions. They're the cleanest.
Clean.
You know, you're gonna really hear it nice.
All these years later, right? We've been waiting for this.
You know? So I have a question for that as well. It says, will the CD of songs from Sheena's Act One TV special be made available separately or for streaming? I'm on the fence about buying the box set because I have most of the albums in the set. I would tell him, sorry, I'm answering for you, buy the box set. It's so worth it if you're a fan of Sheena, just for the alternate versions, the remastered sound, and the booklet. It's like, you know, behind the scenes, I always say, music documentary in print of those 5 albums. So I would definitely say it's worth the price of buying the box set if you're on the fence. But you can answer the question if they're going to be released streaming wise.
No, they won't, because the in terms of the full Act One soundtrack.
Yeah.
Because there was only space for there wasn't space for all of it on here. Otherwise, I suppose I could have done that if there had been space, but there just wasn't. So it made sense to prioritize the songs that people hadn't heard. You know, the cover versions that were never recorded in the studio, not the others. And there aren't really that many others. There's only about 3 other songs.
Yeah, and they're all her hits, right? Your Eyes Only.
Yeah, which is a
We've Got Tonight and Wind Beneath My Wings.
Yeah.
For Your Eyes Only, Wind Beneath My Wings. What was the other one?
We've Got Tonight.
But We've Got Tonight, I think, is exactly the same as. I don't think it's a different version, to be honest.
Those are live vocals.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Live vocals over the production track.
Oh, right. Okay. So those 3. But yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of time to get those optimized to the thing, and I don't know if it would be. There's no plans for that to happen for streaming now.
Right.
At this point, no. So it was just concentrating on those, because there's a lot of work. If you listen to them and compare them to the soundtrack, you'll hear that they have been really polished up.
Yeah.
To sound as good as they can, because the beginning and endings were kind of clapping and fading in and out and stuff, and all that's been had to be sort of dealt with. So they sound really good.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, Out Here on My Own is probably my favorite.
Oh, me too, by far. And I of course a little Streisand feel in there, the way she's just sitting there and belting it out effortlessly. It really is just so fabulous.
Peter Matt.
Yeah.
She gave me that Judy Garland kind of, like, you know, laying on the floor and just with the mic.
Well, it's, you know, you know this already, but the production company was the same production company that did Barbra Streisand's TV specials.
Dwight Heeman.
And Peter Matz was the musical director, and he was Barbra Streisand's musical director for her TV special. So there is definitely, and I'm sure Sheena had, you know, requested that as well. So I'm sure that was a thrill for her to have the same team behind her icon doing.
Yes, a
TV
strong Barbara connection. And also, about a year or two after that, and I watched this recently, I'd forgotten, when Barbara Streisand did her, well, I was going to say comeback concert, but it was her first concert that they did for like HBO and whatever. They did for a video. It was One Voice in '86, I think.
It was.
Sheena is in the crowd, in the select, was one of the people that got invited to the like very intimate, like 200 people audience.
I have a story.
Oh, go on.
I think I need to share with you both. You know when somebody calls out of work and they wind up being on TV, and they get caught. Sheena canceled the concert I was supposed to be at.
Oh.
At the Garden State Arts Center in New Jersey to go see Barbara.
Oh, so you were stood up for Barbara?
Yes, I was.
You can't blame her.
Not for the first time.
I did.
It was a once. Well, she thought it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, right?
Yeah, I would love.
That's funny that she canceled it, and then you saw her.
Yeah, and she's on TV. I was like, what?
And actually, Barbara mentions her in her book. She talks about that concert and mentions Sheena Easton as one of the people that said something nice about being able to see her. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was right below where she apologized to me for not showing up.
That's right.
I just want to say I'm so sorry to Ike. I love Barbara.
Right.
I had to choose between Ike and Barbara.
You're given.
Yeah.
And we have another question too, and not to jump ahead, but we spoke of Laura Branigan and Gloria. And Kai from Santa Rosa, California wants to know, would you ever consider doing the same project for Laura Branigan and Olivia Newton-John?
Wow. Well, I'd love to do both those artists, particularly Olivia Newton-John. I'm a big fan of Olivia.
Yeah.
But before he does that, he has to do the MCA catalog for...
Which is the next question I got. Yeah. So is there a chance you'd do something for Laura Branigan and Olivia, or would you?
Well, for Laura Branigan, I know that her catalogue has been applied for many times, and for some reason there's some issue, I think, with that.
Yeah,
it doesn't look like that's going to happen. I think they've tried to do that, and it's not going to happen. For Olivia, there's a company called Primary Wave that controls her stuff, and they're currently doing it. So that's in process, I believe, at the moment.
Yeah, I think I guess there's a lot of negativity coming from that whole.
Well, there was someone involved who is not involved anymore, and they feel like it's just dropped or fell to the wayside. Because I actually saw they took this release and you're posting at them, and they forwarded it to Primary Wave, or they shouted out to Primary Wave and said, "This is how you do an artist's catalog."
Oh,
and,
right. Wow.
Yeah, so
that's.
You might get an offer. We'll see.
We'll see. My God,
really big.
Yeah, but I'd love to do Olivia. Yeah, it'd be great to do like an expanded version of like Soul Kiss or something.
Yes,
it's one of my favorite albums.
Me too.
They did Physical. They already did Physical, didn't they?
Yeah, they did Physical, and I think they did If You Love Me, one of the first albums.
Yeah, they haven't done Totally Hot. Totally Hot's a great album as well.
Yeah, they didn't do that one. No, they re-released it. They remastered it, but they did not do a full package deluxe version of it.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a lot of material with lots of unreleased material with Olivia. I don't know. There weren't B-sides and things. Oh, there were actually for Xanadu. There were some B-sides.
Some of the points. Well, I think the B-sides with Xanadu were included in the movie, but not in the soundtrack, right?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of complaints with the Olivia Newton-John that there are no B-sides. So I'm wondering if I'm sure there's additional recordings from her.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
There was always rumors that some of her stuff was lost in that fire that affected a lot of artists. She was one of them that was listed on some long list of artists that were affected by masters being ruined in a fire.
Right. Yes, I remember that story. And then, but then regarding what you were saying about the MCA years for Sheena, absolutely would love to do that. I'm hoping to do that. Will depend on the licensing, really. So with these things, they have to be, the label has to agree. It's a very long, protracted thing, and I'm trying to make that happen.
Well,
and I'm hoping it does happen.
When we say
One of the complications
welcome back for the 24th time, Adam.
Yeah, my God, it'd be amazing. One of the complications of the MCA stuff is that she wasn't signed just to one label. It was different ones. So parts of it were like MCA Japan, and that would be a different.
Yeah, that was.
It's not all in one thing. I think that makes it a little bit more difficult.
I think they're all under Universal, though.
They're all under the Universal umbrella, yeah, but it's separate divisions.
The only one that I think that's not is her own. She owned one of those albums.
I think Skytrack, but I think it was
commissioned by MCA Japan, but it was released under her own label, Freedom.
Freedom, right? Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, I really hope that can happen, because it'd be great to do those properly.
Well, we're all excited about this, but we all want to know what we can expect with Volume 2, and when can we expect it?
Well, Volume 2 is being worked on now.
Okay.
I'm working on it still.
Okay.
And so it's in process, and hopefully it will be out. Well, I'm sure it'll be out before the end of the year. When exactly, I don't want to commit to a month yet, because there's still quite a bit more to do in terms of getting things approved and things like that. So there is stuff to do, but it will be out before the end of the year. I'm pretty sure at this point.
Nice.
Hopefully, maybe October, maybe November, I would have thought. It takes a while. These things take a while, because obviously, even when I finish and delivered it, once I deliver it, the whole finished thing, it takes months before it's to get. But there's a whole process of people approving things and other stuff to happen.
Can't even imagine the hard work that you have put in.
It's amazing.
This box set alone, let alone all the other releases that you've done with this project. But this alone must have been tireless.
Yeah, the box sets in particular are sort of quite marathon things, and it has helped that there is floating box. It has helped that I chipped away at bits of this along the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'd be impossible. For Volume 2, of course, it will include the final albums, up to and including No Sound But a Heart. It will hopefully, I don't really want to say what it will definitely include, because it still wasn't approved, you see. So, but as we've alluded to and mentioned in other previous podcasts, there was a bunch of material, a really exciting amount of material that she recorded for the 1986, what would have been, as we were saying, she'd now year, so there would have been, she was due to put out an album in the year that she put out So Far So Good, and no album came out until the following year.
Right.
Which was Sound But Heart. So there was a bunch of stuff she was recording then that kind of got shelved. Some of which have been released in certain versions along the way, like Anything Can Happen.
Yes.
Which I think the 7-inch version, the 12-inch version.
Michael J, right? I believe.
Michael J, yes. And other things like Sweet Talker.
Mm-hmm.
There was a Shep Pettibone remix that came out. And some of the bits and pieces that I on the different vinyl releases along the way, if I've had bonus material, I put them on there that weren't on CD. They will hopefully be on this box set as well, the second volume.
Exciting.
So it's all stuff like that. Yeah.
Well,
yeah, lots of stuff. I mean, there's quite a lot of. There's actually, if it all goes through and is approved, it will be a more unreleased material than on this one.
Well, hopefully we can tie in, because I'm trying to get an interview with Narada Michael Walden.
Oh wow!
So hopefully that will tie in with the Volume 2. So that would be wonderful.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
He is so a wealth of just anecdotes and stories. It's incredible. When I spoke to him
and funny
for No Sound But a Heart, he was just so. It was incredible. He was in his studio, he was showing me around his studio on his phone and saying, "This is where Whitney and Aretha did this, and me and Sheena did this and that." And yeah, he was great. I mean, he basically recorded well, not a whole album, but nearly a whole album's worth of material with her.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Which about half came out, I suppose.
Look at the Aretha, like you said, Aretha songs. Oh my God, they were classic. Put her right back on the map.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was the top of his game at that period in the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Huge, yeah. And that Jermaine Stewart song as well was great.
Yes, great song.
Oh my God.
He did the early Stacey Ladislaw.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Angela Bofill, he
just
did.
He's such a great arranger. He knew just how to make a song pop, like just have energy, you know?
Yeah, what's interesting about some of these people, like Nada is actually how you pronounce it. Nada, Michael Walden, and Jay Graydon, and Greg Matheson. These guys, they're making these really brilliantly well thought through, brilliantly arranged pop records, but they are real jazz guys, like jazz fusion. When you hear those early Nada, Michael Walden records, they're like proper intense jazz fusion, and you can go from this real sort of like something like that to make something which has a real pop sensibility, and is quite a range.
Yeah,
and I don't think you have that level of artistry and real musicianship. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Of course, it still exists in the world, but in pop music now, it's not quite the same.
Right. No.
To bring that level of that depth to it. Something.
No. So tell us what you have next going on outside of Sheena. Tell us any projects you're working on. We're interested to know about that.
Well, there are a few. There are several different things that are in the pipeline, but nothing's like 100% confirmed yet, so I can't really talk about it.
But the talk, I'm telling you, the Prince project you work on, everybody's talking about that on the Prince websites, and they love it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. I'd love to do a volume 2 of that, to be honest, at some point.
Oh, and we also need to mention that this sold out before it was released.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yes.
It's amazing. I think, I am, I won't say I'm shocked by that, but I am a little bit kind of, it's sold out. I mean, the previously, what else? Something else sold out before. I think it was the Spanish album on vinyl sold out.
Yes.
But they didn't print many of that. They didn't press a huge amount because I think there was a feeling that like, well, this is like, it's vinyl only, and it's like not. It's quite obscure out. It's a kind of specialist, I suppose you'd say, album.
Yeah.
So let's not kind of press loads and not sell. For this, I think it's what my thinking behind it is that like you'd think maybe that like because it's more expensive that maybe it won't sell as many. So we don't. But in fact, it's selling more.
Right.
I think maybe a lot of people weren't aware, possibly, of the previous releases and didn't get them, and this or were waiting for a box set, or
I think some people from the comments, it looked like some people waited for, instead of buying the individual ones, waited for this, and then some people are new that didn't even know that there was re-releases. So
right, exactly.
Combination of both, And
I think the good thing that now that it's being promoted as well through official Sheena Easton, it's promoting it in a way that the others weren't promoted.
Right.
That reaches a huge amount, many more people.
Yes, I've seen it on her official website this morning. They posted it as well.
Yeah, and they wouldn't, and so that's reaching those people, and it's so hard because how do people find out about these things? These things come out, and how do you know about it? You don't know about it,
right?
So it's got to be through that. You've got to find out about it. So this really represents what I think. Really, it's really good value for money. When you think about it, it's actually per CD or per. It's not. It's obviously more expensive, but there's so much on it in the box. And the other thing was, what I really didn't want to do was like make people buy things again and again. And I know that 2 of the 5 discs, in theory, like sections have been out before, but they're even on those ones. Take My Time and Madness, Money, Music. There's so much extra material getting anyway that it kind of isn't just like you're buying exactly the same thing, So very aware of that. We spoke about that a lot, and I know Sheena wanted that too. So. that's on them.
Well, we want to give a shout out to the world of Sheena Easton, who so excited that you have this whole project under control. I mean, this particular box set, the sound quality, the visuals for each CD, just making it exciting as though, it's the first time we're getting a new release, different covers on each one. The entire package is brilliant. And you are amazing. We're so grateful that you came on the show again to talk about Volume 1. And perfect. All the hard work you put into it, everybody is so excited that it's out.
Oh, thank you, Ike. I appreciate it. I'm really glad people are enjoying it, and I hope they, and re-listen. When you listen to those alternate versions, because there's so much great stuff on that.
I cannot wait to hear it.
Yeah, I just have to say, we will never have something like this again. You're never going to have these albums released with this sound quality, with this type of introspection, with the interviews with the songwriters, the producers, So I think this is just a very special time for any Sheena Easton fan, or really any fan of the 80s who just wants to hear what a snapshot of what the 80s sounds like. This is one of the premier vocalists and one of the premier artists of that decade. And so it's a good representation of what a pop singer sounded like in the 80s. And you've done an amazing, amazing job, Adam. I'm so grateful that you were at the helm and we're not in a situation with other artists where, we feel they're not getting treated properly. So thank you once again for just an outstanding job.
Yeah, I really wanted to. I knew when I was doing when you see a lot of these reissues, you realize that actually what they've done is taken the same tracks, the album tracks, maybe the B-sides, and maybe the odd mix, and put it together. And they've used the same tracks, and they're really compressed. And the audio, there's no real. It's rare that people go back and find the original masters for the sound. People just don't do that
because it's expensive.
It's because it's expensive. It takes time. And I know people are always anxious. When's the next thing coming out? But the thing is, if you're going to do it properly, you do need to take the time for that. Okay. And what was fortunate in this particular set of circumstances is that RT Industries, who now own Sheena's catalogue, made access to the vaults possible. Because when I've worked in projects before, you don't get that. You just kind of almost get what you're given because you're licensing it. They'll send you sometimes for a major label, they'll just sort of send you the files that have been released previously. So you won't get access to the original masters. Maybe sometimes, but it's not a done thing for every time. So to have that amount of access has made it possible. And I knew when I was doing it that it's not going to happen. Well, I can't say for sure, but I just can't. This was the opportunity to make it happen the best it could be. And as far as I know, that's not going to happen to this extent in the future in terms of, So I wanted to do it.
You made it happen.
Yeah, I wanted to make it happen.
You made it happen. And as Sheena would say, if you want to relive your youth, pick up this box set immediately. It's amazing. And Adam, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you so much.
Oh, thank you guys. And I hope you enjoy it when you listen to it.
Oh, are you kidding me? I can't wait. I'm ready to go to my old address and go pick it up. It's probably
don't knock on the door.
Give me my box set.
Yeah, I know you have it. But thank you for coming on. We can't wait for Volume 2. And anything you have coming up, please let us know. We'd love to have you on.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, thank you
again.
Take care, Adam.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Bye.